Good morning, everyone. In this video, we will focus mainly on talking about a topic that history books don't pay much attention to, perhaps because of the historical shame that these events present for white people. When talking about the real situation of Black women and their descendants during the slave system, especially when we talk about the life of mulatto women. The dilemma of mulatto women, mistress by night and servant by day. It is something we must talk about to know the reason behind many of the stereotypes and prejudices associated with this mixed race woman, who has always been the most hated, misunderstood, repudiated, or criticized woman by some white women. And at the same time, the body of the mulattoes woman was the source of desire by many men. Everyone knows when people of different gender get together, even if it is between a Black and white person, given the racial prejudices of the time, these relationships created a new type of woman that, due to its hybrid nature, the colonizers called mulatto. Although hormonal exchange between slaves and owners were prohibited, very few slave owners obeyed this prohibition. Maybe that's why we know about the increase in biracial people during the American slave system. Many people have the false belief that mulatto women enjoyed certain racial privileges compared to Black women, perhaps because in some cases they were preferred by slave owners because of their skin color, and in other cases they were illegitimate daughters of a forbidden relationship between a Black woman and a white slave owner. But other mulatto women had the same bad luck as many Black women who were considered mistress at night and servants during the day. Both mulatto women and Black women were considered and treated as slaves, which breaks that myth about the mulatto women who obtained racial privileges that Black women didn't get. Many mulatto women preferred to sleep in the lodgings designated for the slaves that served the big houses of the large plantations than to sleep under the same roof as the slave owner, as a way to avoid the midnight calls from their master when he needed to be satisfied his hormonal desires, even when his wife was in the main room. A forbidden relationship known to some white women in the face of the infidelity of their husbands. A white woman who learned to keep quiet to protect her marriage, but also her reputation, acting as if nothing was happening between her husband and a slave woman, who inadvertently was the mistress of her master. The story is always the same. When there is infidelity, the mistress is always blamed, never the husband, and more so when the mulatto woman has such a bad reputation. Something that the history books don't talk about. The enormous burden that Black women suffered during slavery, forced to work in the fields, and sometimes indulging the fantasies of their owner, but also using her womb as a slave factory. If the Black men had a miserable life in the plantation fields, imagine the life of the Black woman, and much worse, a mulatto woman who was the result of a forbidden relationship. A slave woman rejected for not being white and rejected for not being Black. A woman who was born cursed long before she could see the first light of day. The Black mother of a mulatto woman begged God to give her a male child, to avoid the bad omens brought by mulatto girls, condemned to be sold by their master, to hide infidelity, and in worse cases, exploited by their owners, sometimes used as a reward by friends of the owner, and in some cases used by the young sons of the slave master on the plantation. Given the affinity of the mulatto woman with the Black woman, but also her affinity with the white woman, they have always been the enigma of all men who find in this mixture of two races the best of both worlds, the strength of the Black woman and the beauty of the white woman, but also the worst of the human being at the time of being abused by their owners, friends, and relatives during the slave system in the United States, but also in some regions of Latin America and the Caribbean. Whether under abuse, rape, or coercion, the mulatto woman, apart from being an object of its owners, she was also morally degraded by behaviors socially condemned within a slave system. It was much easier to have a mulatto concubine, a white-skinned mulatto woman, than to be married to a white woman, and the children resulting from this concubinage became slaves despite having a white father, contrary to the children of a white woman. White women who were free even though their father was a black man. The fate of many black and mulatto women was in the hands of their owners, and some end up being mistress at night and servants during the day. All historians come to the conclusion that the mulatto woman was at that time one of the type of women most desired by all men. She is the only woman whose myths, mysteries, and the excessive imagination due to her condition as a mulatto, in many cases, is out of control in popular imagination in relation to the myths about the sensuality of this woman, who fill the hormonal fantasies of men, the capacity of attraction to the opposite gender, and the inner strength that the mulatto woman possesses. The black woman was seen as if she were a working animal. The white women were seen as a decorative figure full of delicacy. The mulatto woman racially inherited the vigor of the black woman and the gentle treatment that only white women received, due to her condition as a slave woman preferred by her owner. One of the great myths during the colonial era, given the hybrid character of the mulatto woman and the comparison of her with a mule, the mixture between a donkey and a horse, from which some historians argue the name of mulatto arose. The chances of a mule to have young were almost impossible. The mulatto woman in the comparison with a mule animal, given the hybrid nature of both, based on popular beliefs and ignorance about biology, many assumed that mulatto woman was also sterile. Of course, everyone discovered later that this myth about the supposed sterility of the mulatto woman only existed in the minds of the naive, increasing the number of the biracial population during the colonial period and later. One of the great tragedies of the mulatto woman, she was not white enough to be the lady of the house, not black enough for a black man to take her seriously. She is looked with suspicion by a white woman for her bad reputation, but also looked with disdain by a black woman who sees her as another rival. The mulatto is a woman who, when she walks, you see a black woman. When she speaks, you hear a white woman. When she dances, you look at a black woman. When she pays attention to you, you think you are talking to a white woman. And when you look at her face, you always wonder, what will this woman be like? The mulatto woman creates the enigma that surrounds her, and men and other women who don't enjoy this racial mixture. When you are in front of a mulatto woman, you are in front of someone, whether you are black or white, racially different from you. A unique, indecipherable, mystical, desirable, and exotic woman. There is nothing more enigmatic and attractive than the look of a mulatto woman when she is in front of the man she likes. The mulatto woman in modern times, in a predominantly white society, her social position and the popular myth that still accompanies her has not changed much in 400 years. She is still seen more as a fantasy than as a human being with the same rights. A woman who has never been considered by her intelligence, education, good values, personality, and beauty, just like a white woman. The mulatto woman has always been socially despised but desired. It is time to change all negative stereotypes about the mulatto woman. Today, in a modern world, mulatto women are only seen with a concubine mentality, who were born to be the mistress, not the lady of the house. A woman exploited by white men, but also by black men with a certain level of wealth who look at mulatto women as another trophy. In a racially divided society between blacks and whites, the position of mulatto women is closely related to the levels of blackness that she represents. At the time when you may or may not recognize the characteristic Negroid or Caucasoid phenotype in this mixed-race woman. In a racially divided society, the mulatto woman's racial identity was the result of the caste system, and her social position depended largely on the racial closeness of her white owners. The mulatto woman was and is seen above the black woman and with greater possibilities of raising her social position, even when both grew up in the same economic level and social environment. But the mulatto woman is at a disadvantage in relation to the white woman in the possibility of achieving success, in a society where the European beauty is the model to follow. Given the historical association that exists of seeing mulatto women as Black and the prejudices associated with Blackness, in most cases the image of mulatto woman is used as a synonym for Black women. Racial preference which is in the detriment and loss of opportunity of the Black woman. This dualism of the mulatto woman to the detriment of the Black woman affects, in some cases, the self-esteem of a Black girl when she tries to achieve a racially impossible image that can only be filled by a mulatto woman due to the racial traits of a white woman that only she possesses. Of course, just as the presence of a mulatto decreases the chances of success of the Black woman, at the same time, the mulatto, given the levels of similarity with the European phenotype, is more accepted in positions dedicated especially to white women, creating with this greater possibilities for a Black woman to reach these positions due to the association that socially exists between Black women and mulatto women. In modern times, especially in the United States, the most used term is biracial or mixed race. Within a Latin American context, historically, you are considered as a mulatto, although many don't want to identify themselves as a mulatto when they speak of her racial composition, given the derogatory nature of this term. Historically, the mulatto woman, her body has been exploited, in many cases meeting the hormonal needs of its owner. Abused by her master, she was despised for her skin color, too white to be Black, too Black to be white. She is denied the right to choose her own racial identity. Despite all that, mulatto women have been able to occupy the highest positions during the slave system, but also right now. When you observe the great historical figures in America, television, actresses, successful women of color, scientists, writers, educators, activists, and defenders of Black rights in the United States, no one doubts the great contributions that mulatto women have. No one doubts that the mulatto woman represents the best of both worlds, but also to her misfortune, the mulatto woman inspires the worst on both sides. Ladies and gentlemen, do you find this work entertaining and informative? Please subscribe to this channel.